So what I want to do first is just I guess asking you about your background in music. What inspired you? What kind of, what your influences, playing? How did that start? Kind of from there.
Well, I started playing the piano when I was a small kid,
Mm-hmm.
and I mostly played classical music, and doing that throughout my childhood, and then I was like, in my teens, and I got really tired of doing that. I wanted to do something different, and so I picked up the guitar when I was 18, actually, and I had a little book of chords. I didn't really know how to play the guitar and or how to learn how to play the guitar. I didn't have a teacher, so I just started writing songs to teach myself how to play. And I don't know, maybe I'm a little bit stupid or something, but it never occurred to me that I could play other people's songs, So, so I started writing songs instead. And of course, the first couple of songs was 2 chords or 3 chords,
Right, yeah.
But so after that, I just started writing songs and playing more and more. And then I found a backing band, and I started playing a little bit live. And so I've been doing that now for a long time. And I won't say how long because that makes me really old. But no, so it's I put out my first album in 2005, and I just put out my 9th album last year in 23.
So how did having that classical music foundation help you?
That's a hard question because, what I do is so far from that. I think what it really did was just turn me in the opposite direction.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I guess,
Was it, you mentioned having a backing band. Was that hard to do? Putting a band together?
At the time I was so just went with the flow kind of thing. I didn't have I never had any dream of becoming a pop artist or anything like that. And I just happened to know some people who played different instruments, and they were willing to play with me. And so we just that's kind of how we started doing that. And the guitar player has actually been with me now for it's it's soon 20 years,
Wow.
So, but then, it took some time, with different musicians until you find the right people. Unfortunately, they're all in Sweden, so
Okay.
I can't really bring them on tour with me here in the US, but yeah.
So where in Sweden did you start, I guess, gigging out, playing out with your band?
Yeah, so I'm born in Gothenburg. I grew up on the west coast of Sweden, but I moved to Stockholm when I was in my early 20s. So that's the capital of Sweden.
Is that a pretty good music scene as far as meeting other musicians, kind of collaborating?
Yeah, it's probably the best you have in Sweden, which is a pretty hard country to play music in because it's small and we have 10 million people. So, the country is not small. It's actually a really big country, but we only have 10 million people. So it's kind of hard to get out there and make a living as an artist.
Right.
That's why I do a lot of touring in the US and the rest of Europe.
And so this is a little bit about your touring. So you on your current tour through the United States, you're playing in a lot of public libraries.
I do.
And so where'd that idea come from, and what do you like about performing in libraries?
Well, it was always when I book the tours, I look where other artists play, and I guess I followed an artist that played libraries, and I was like, oh, you can do that. And the great thing about libraries is it's kind of usually not on a weekend where you can get other shows, but on a Tuesday or Thursday or something like that, when it's really hard to kind of find a good venue to play. And and easy to book on the way to somewhere. And I think the great thing about the library shows also is it's sort of a community service where you can, because when I play a show in St. Louis, for example, you have to pay a ticket for $25, but
Right.
a lot of people don't have that kind of money. And so I think it's just great that the libraries can offer live music to people who might not have the funds to go and see it elsewhere. And or at different times of the day where if you're a stay-at-home mom or something, you might not be able to go in the evening, and you can bring your kids in the daytime. It's a great way that to present music. I think it's just different, and you can reach a whole different kind of crowd.
Well, and especially compared to different clubs and bars, libraries are a lot easier to be in, typically, as far as gigging out and stuff like that. Kind of going back, and you mentioned that you had 9 recordings or 9 albums you've done. What about that process do you enjoy?
I mean, it's always fun to record because, like, when I write the songs, it's just me, right? I don't sit with a band and write the songs. I write the songs myself.
Do you start with just your guitar? I mean, do you start with lyrics first, or do you think
it's
of
different?
Okay.
You know, yeah. I mean, usually like the melody and the lyrics come first, you know. But yeah, so because I do all of that solo, it's kind of fun when you start recording it with a band, because then you hear the songs growing and you know, you get input, you know, from musicians. And I mean, I don't like, from my latest album now, I have accordion and mandolin on the album, and I don't play any of those instruments. So I wouldn't be able to tell them like play this or play that. I could say like, you know, oh, I would like it to sound kind of like this, or you know, and then they will play, and then maybe they will, you know, tell me like, oh, you know, we could try do this, and you know, and to get their input is really important, I think, because you really have to listen to the person who plays the instrument instead of being like the boss who says like do this, you know.
So you give them probably like your chords, what you'd like,
Oh, yeah,
and then
yeah.
they
they learn the songs, like they know the songs and the form and the chords and all that, and of course I will tell them, you know, okay, so this is like an upbeat song, but on the last verse we will like slow it down and make it soft, you know, like stuff like that. But then I kind of leave it a lot up to them to sort of interpret that, and then of course I will say if I don't like it, I will tell them, of course, you know, or if there's something that they do that is like super great, I'm like, do that, more of that, you know. So but it's really, it's a fun process. It's really fun, especially when you can record together.
You mean like all being in the same room at the same time, and so you're talking about like that process of where you're managing musicians, which is to get something creative.
It's the producer's job, you know. So I'm my own producer, you know. So
that's exciting. Are these typically session musicians, or are these people that are with you all? You know what I mean? Are they part of your band, or are they someone you're able to bring in, or a little mixture?
So most of them are the people that have now played with me for nearly 20 years.
Oh, that's awesome.
But for this last album, I actually brought in 2 American musicians that I met on a tour over here 2 years ago, and they have a little folk band, like folk bluegrass kind of band in North Carolina called Discount Rothko. And they opened for me at a show, and I was like, usually when I have to share shows with bands, I'm like, you know, you sit and you wait for your slot, kind of. So I'm like, maybe not so focused, and I'm like, you know, But when they played, I was like, wow, this is really awesome, because, like I said, one of them plays the accordion, and that's never been like a favorite instrument of mine. But when I heard him play it, I've never heard anyone play it like that. So when I started thinking about recording the new album, those guys came to mind, and I was like, they can bring something completely different to my sound than what I can find in Sweden, you know, because like the bluegrass influence from them is something that you can't really find in Sweden. We don't, that's not our tradition.
Yeah, it's just different.
Yeah, so I just thought that was really cool, and I really think that they did a great job, and they're great guys, and so it was a lot of fun.
You mentioned like influence of bluegrass. Is there and this is where I'm simply just ignorant on, but is there like a style of music that comes from Sweden that you can only get there? Like
I mean, I would say, you know, the traditional Swedish folk music in Sweden is kind of different from what you would hear in the U.S. And it's really beautiful too, you know. It's more melancholic, and a lot of a cappella stuff, of course, but also violins and key harp and stuff like that. So that's definitely like special for the Nordic countries, I would say.
Yeah. What are some things you're listening to right now?
Oh, that's a hard question. I listen to so much different kinds of music.
Yeah.
And I mean, I really like Valerie June, for example. She's great. I like Jason Isbell, Nico Case. Those are like, you know, artists that I come back to. But then also, like, since the pandemic, actually, you know, I started listening to a lot of more kind of instrumental music. So I guess because being an artist, when I sing, and the lyrics for me is very important when I write. but sometimes it could be exhausting to try to like focus so much on the music that you listen to, you know, because, you know, you want to hear the lyrics and know what the songs are about. So I guess during the pandemic, when everything was like so weird and you were a little stressed, you know, I started listening to a lot of instrumental music, and so that's kind of something that I come back to now when I want to relax and just like take it easy.
Was that time? Were you in Sweden during the pandemic?
No, so I was actually here when it happened, and so I was in Texas for a month before I could get on a flight back to Europe, and. So yeah, it was kind of interesting, but it was also a pretty good place to be. We were in this little surf town down in Texas on the coast, and basically no people there, so we could just go on walks on the beach and, you know, and then be by ourselves, you know. So it was pretty nice. Then coming back to Europe, it was like, you know, on and off, like probably like it was here too, like, oh, it would open up a little bit, and then you would do some shows, and then, oh no, we're closing down again, and you had to cancel everything again. And so so I did a lot of online shows for sure, like everyone, I guess, you know.
Do you and I know it's kind of asking you to compare two different things, but do you prefer being out on the road, or did you enjoy that opportunity to kind of be in place and be able to perform online shows?
No, I hated doing the online shows. It's super weird to not have an audience that you can't see. You know, you're like in a room with an iPhone.
Yeah.
You have to work so hard to kind of like be natural in that situation. For me, when I have an audience, it's so much about the audience, you know. When I'm performing, it's like, you know, I feed off whatever what they're expressing, you know, if they're happy or sad or clapping or, you know, and just like being in front of an iPhone and playing, I did not enjoy that.
Yeah. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I was happy though, because I had my husband is touring with me doing the sound.
Great.
So he was the one like filming, and he always tried to like liven it up for me and clap and be like, you know, and it would help a little bit. And we did some fun shows, you know, where we had like special themes and stuff. But overall, I definitely prefer to have people that I can see in front of me.
Yeah, and an audience of one is probably different than the energy. The energy from well, I don't mean to keep you anymore. I appreciate you spending a couple minutes with me. This is great. We're really excited to have you tonight.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.